I think another thing that has a large place in sort of the working environment today is communication. In a time of crisis, how important is communication within business?
Communication is so important, and it can surprisingly sometimes be so difficult. And in crisis, of course, it's even more difficult. And I think we can even see that, when we look at all the daily briefings that we're getting from people that should be our top-notch communicators in the government, look at all the challenges that they've got over communicating their messages. I think that when this pandemic hit, it was very challenging to get the communications out, because they've got to be done in a really timely manner, because everything within this crisis, everything was happening very quickly. Normally when you communicate in a business, even though it can be quite challenging, you have a lot more time to sort of think about your communications and get the messaging right and get it really clear. The communications through this pandemic, and when we were sort of in the process of working out what we were going to do and how we were going to close down offices, you had very short time frame to get your communications out, because everything was changing so quickly. And when you're running a big business with people in so many different locations, so many different people working from home, a whole mixture of different things. Some people that were going to have to come in because they were key workers. So some offices that were going to have to stay open, some offices that were going to have to stay closed. We also had to get our UK communications to make sure that they were aligned with the global communications that were coming out. And global were a bit slower than some of the communications we wanted to do. So we ended up sometimes with a little bit of misalignment on communications, which could, sort of add a little bit of confusion. But communication was so key. And of course, what we were communicating was absolutely crucial. Some instances it was, do not come into work. That was a big message to communicate and to get through to everybody. And then there was all the communications about how we were going to work remotely. So there was a whole set of communications that had to go out to the senior leaders and our junior leaders about how they were going to manage their teams. So the communications is absolutely critical, but it's very challenging to get out these incredibly clear communications in such a short time frame. And that was certainly my sort of personal experience of managing the communications and how we went through this process of training people and then shutting down offices. But absolutely key. And as I said, I think we can just see that with the daily briefings that we get from our government, how critical communications are, but how challenging it is. And you want your communications to be simple and memorable, but sometimes you've got to communicate quite a lot of stuff as well to get people to actually read through, your sort of whole message. So critical that you get good communications, timely communications out, but can be surprisingly challenging and difficult.